My name's Kim Farmer. My father is Graham Polly Farmer, and he passed away last year, and at the event of his death he was then diagnosed with CTE. So Dad obviously was an elite footballer, and he was very driven, and our life revolved around his drive to succeed, and so it was a life of football, but also being around someone that was able to apply himself 100% to his success as a footballer, and also very strategic, and probably ahead of his time in his thinking. Although it was a game of football, he applied it like he was a scientist or an architect of sport. There's definitely one where he was fully knocked out. A brother who also followed Dad's game really closely says it was probably a series of small concussions as opposed to continuing being knocked out for a period of time. But for Dad and his type of personality, he didn't want to spend any time not either playing football, training, or getting right back into it. So whatever he did suffer on the football field, he was back training almost immediately. And as we know now, that's probably one of the worst things he could have done, and he needed to probably have some time, sitting on the couch. My brother does recall when it was determined that he did have CTE. He recounted remembering Dad often after a game coming home and vomiting, and clearly was suffering from symptoms of concussion. Initially there was a period of stress for Dad that then sort of morphed into quite a dramatic change of his behaviour, and he became angry and sort of unable to kind of regulate his emotions. And it was such a long time ago, and it happened in over a period of years, and it was determined that he had early onset dementia. And but in fact, as the years continued, without any sort of medical advice, there was a strong feeling that this probably had to do with his football career and concussions on the ground, as opposed to it being a really long drawn out dementia. He did certainly go on to have dementia as he got older, and but those early years, in my mind, it was a very dramatic change in his behaviour, from a very placid, introverted, thinking man. He became overt in his political views, in his getting very angry, and that was going to be directed at nearest and dearest, or particularly was quite good at the car park range all of a sudden. At the time we didn't know really what was going on, and we were hoping that it was just a period and it was to do with the stress, but it continued. That was around when he was about in his early 60s. Dad, from that period, because he, prior to, all through his younger years and his playing years and his coaching years, he was a very deep thinking man. That continued on during this period, and it became very intense. So he would often take himself off walking, and that sort of developed into almost a compulsion. And the way he was trying to regulate his emotions that he no longer was able to do, he would go walking, and we suspected he was probably doing about 20 or 30 k's a day. Well, he was always very much the central person in our family. He had his wife, my mother, loved and adored him. So even with these huge changing behaviours, she was still able to kind of ensure that we all treated him with the utmost respect. And he was a very big man, so this big gentle man turned into a big sort of more of an aggressive man in periods, not all the time. It was just those spike periods, and our responses were to try not to get him upset, and to in retrospect we understand now what was going on. At the time, I guess we were just not sure what was the case, and it's actually in some regards it's good to know now what was happening then, to understand that, and that it was beyond his control. I mean, we felt in a few years after that it was the dementia that was playing out, and we were able to kind of understand it in those terms. But now it makes all the sense in the world that someone like who he was, so driven at the time and not wanting to just continue through any concussion or anything that occurred, he would, in years to follow, would be suffering as a result. I think we felt almost certainly that was going to be the case. It was only last year, so it's still just under a year, and there hadn't really been other, to my knowledge, other AFL players that had this diagnosis. There'd been a couple of NRL players, and obviously in America with the gridiron, it was very, very much known, and so it was sort of unknown territory for us, really, what that would be. And we're really fortunate that the medical research that was done, or the diagnosis was done really super sensitively, and we felt very included and respected, and when we saw the results and we understood what had occurred, we were appreciative. There was an immediate response when it was released publicly, and in a very good way. We could see that it could contribute to young people in particular playing sport, and not just football but all contact sport, and how they can, how the governing bodies, the sporting bodies, whether it's at a very local level or a very elite level, can modify the game to ensure that young people won't be kind of blindly incurring these injuries that can have a lifetime of impacts. And so I feel really grateful. I feel like Dad has done a number of things throughout his life post-football that really focused on particularly young people, and for Dad it was around certainly Aboriginal young people. And although he didn't sign up for the CTE findings, I know that he would be happy that it has a deeper impact to the wider community, and particularly for young people. It's a long-term study, but keeping the eye on the long game, it is really exciting, and I think it won't just be impacting on someone like future grain poly farmers. It'll be, and not necessarily just in sport, it'll be in all aspects of how people will be treated if they suffer any concussions, whether it be in the workplace, in the playground, or on a sporting field.